And so we'll hear from Carlos first and then from Kasia, and we'll do a similar format if that sounds good to everybody. We'll have the two presentations and then just really time for a conversation and hope, and yeah, that will be fun. And we are recording stuff, I forgot to mention that before, just so that we have an archive of the presentations and the conversations, so not for any public dissemination, but really just so that we have all of this material and we can revisit it as we are developing the exhibition. So, thanks.
Everybody's ready? So, in 1999, a friend of mine working at the museum in Ceuta called me Carlos. A young artist from Tetuan just came and he left his CV and also one of these pieces of wood. You should come here and to see what he does. Because in Ceuta we used to have a lot of exhibition on Moroccan artists. Tetuan is just 4 kilometers far from Ceuta. But it was just about painting, not about art installations. So when I saw the CV, I told myself that would be great to contact him. So I told him, if you ever come to Ceuta again, that would be great to have a coffee with you and we can go to my office. I can show you what I do as an architect. And some years later, he told me that he loved my models, my materials that I had. I think you still have the one on concrete, no? The small one in concrete. And then I came to Tetuan some months later to his house, to his Gorfa. And when I saw the ideas he wanted to develop in a large scale, I told myself, maybe one day we could do something together. And it was the case in 2002. I won an architecture competition to renovate the city center of Ceuta with my brothers. And one of the part of this work is the renovation of a square where we had to resolve a traffic problem, and we did with this pedestrian bridge. So that's to say that there were already a lot of conditions because the shape of the pedestrian bridge, the heritage, the fortification, they were there. And we, with my brother, we decided to use the copper for the railing. But that it was then that I told myself, maybe Younes could help us to develop this railing. And he started to work, thinking about the material, thinking about the kind of design of kind of hole that he could do there. And also, it was another condition that the top of the railing should be rounded. And do you remember the video with the paper? Mm-hmm. He wanted to do the same thing with the copper. But when you work with a sheet of 5 millimeters, you cannot do the same thing. So it was, I think, one of the first confrontation when you work in another scale. And he started to think about light outside. I started to think about the light inside the railing. So this is the pedestrian bridge. You can see the small, because we use finally the drawings to do the hole that in theory were going to be seen by night. But it was also the case by the day with the shadow, no? The small hole. I know Younes is not very happy about what he did, but for me I think it is important that he was confronted to a large scale project, no? In 2005, I was already living in Lyon, France. Every year there were a lot of art installations over the city concerning to light. I told Younes, I have seen a lot of steel wires and cables. It's like a pollution, a visual pollution for the city, but I see that there are already art installations. Maybe we could just add some things to make that being seen another way. I thought that it would be great not to see that by night, but also during the day with a material from 3M, a reflective material. And so with this idea, this conversation, he started to make some drawings about how we could do an art installation over this mesh. We finally they didn't select it, the proposition, but we kept this idea of reflective materials for later on. 2006, Hojra. He came to my office, Carlos, I would like to build this. I don't know if that would be great, 5 meters or maybe 6 or maybe 7. And it wasn't really something new for me because as an architect living in the north of Africa, the marabouts is something very close to me because you can find them also in Ceuta. In fact, I did a project of the renovation of the 3 marabouts in Ceuta. So I understood him, what he wanted to do. No? It was my first collaboration on his project. You know? And it was always about the scale, because it is not about the volume, but also about how people can come inside. We're talking about having this sensation of coming in a special space where you can do meditation. And we have to check the distance, how many people could be inside. And also the light. At the beginning, he told me I would like to have some green light. I thought about how we could introduce those light, and finally he found a better solution. No, we just take a green glass, and that's enough. No? Which I started to think about this simplicity that maybe it's related to the spirituality of Younes, that I started to understand much later when I started to go to the desert. Hojra. 2008. I was still living in France, but because I knew the people from the museum, and we used to do a lot of painting exhibitions, but I talked to them, look, I know a lot of people, young artists, maybe we could do other kind of exhibitions. So it was Once in the museum. It's a beautiful museum with big spaces, but very complicated also to install the works. I wasn't the curator. I'm not a curator. I was just trying Younes and to coordinate everything. But we learned, I think, both of us about what it means to work with these kind of spaces and what is to do an exhibition with I don't know how many work, but a lot. No? Also with the complication of being in Ceuta, but bringing works illegally from Tetuan through the border, so it's that's another matter. We are also smugglers of artwork, specialists. There were new works like Gatra and the performance he did, you didn't mention before. I kept this idea of the tree, and when traveling together, how he loved the trees, or especially the olive trees. And a new work that it was for me the beginning of what came later too. I will talk about that. 2007, we were called to participate with a team with Nawal Islawi because Tangier was going to be a candidate city to become the city for the Universal Exhibition 2012. It didn't happen, but we worked transdisciplinary team on how to introduce contemporary art in the city and how to transform the city. And it was, I remember that experience was very, very interesting because everything I learned about Tangier and about with the other mates of the team. So then, before the general proposition, the governor asked us to do to work on a specific street in Tangier, the Rue Ibn Zohr. that takes people directly, one of the streets that takes you directly from the city center to the port. So it looks like not a very chic neighborhood, but it was really used by people. So there were two spaces, this round square and then the stairs. And Younes is starting to work how we could do something there. And then this first idea with the reflective material, then I discovered electro-reflective material that it doesn't need a lot of electricity, thinking about the electricity consumption. And also it's interesting in this round square, how Younes finally started to use also a kind of lamps. I proposed him from the train traffic lines because it was much cheaper than the lights architects used to use in urban spaces, no? And because if they can resist with this ambient, it's going to resist in danger. But imagine a round circle and lights. Keep that idea. And then we have also to, when we made the project and finally they didn't do it. And there was another element to think about a visual identity for Tanger concerning urban development. So we work about the ground coating, how we could, with just one logo, how, it's a video, and this is image, but it doesn't matter. There's a video where just with one element we started to combine differently and we could propose all the kind of content completely different that could be applied to all the neighborhood in Tanger. 2009, finally Younes had some time to buy a small house in the Medina because he always wanted to live in the Medina. And I understand why. I also would like. And he bought this house, and it was a moment to talk about, and it was very interesting, the conversation about traditional and contemporaneity, talking about architecture. Because the Medina, everybody thinks it's something built at the same time, but in fact it has been built for centuries. So maybe if you are not an architect, it's more difficult, but each period of the time using different techniques, overall related to a structure, it has an implication on the space. So it is not the same thing to have a brick, an arc built on brick, that a wooden beam, that a steel beam, that a concrete beam. This evolution, you can see that on the courtyard. So I told Younes, first of all, how much money do you have to do this? Because I have to think about that. At that moment, he told me, I'm going to sell something, maybe the money is not a problem. Okay. So I started to work. I don't know really why, but looking at those sketches, preparing these conferences, why there is Hojra there? But already there are some trees on the roof. So because I knew he loved trees, I told him, and also I know the Medina, there is no green spaces. I told him, I'm going to make you a garden. What I just said, yeah, a garden. It is possible. You can plant a tree with 5-6 meters, no problem at all. And the other question, very important, is the light and the material. If in some, and today they use concrete, I told him, look, what if we used a glass for the floor in order to have more light in the ground floor, especially if he was going to work there. So I made several propositions, and one of them with the glass floor, also all the door system made on wood. Now they are made on wood, but we thought how we could be more contemporary, have more contemporaneity according to the philosophy of the construction of the Medina, but with the material we have now. And also the light, how the light can come from the roof and arrive, if possible, to the ground. And we did that with the atelier. So it's also like a Hojra, but bigger, a bigger space. And also the transparency between the spaces. It was also a question of knowing the house of the Medina and how you can modify a little bit to get better spaces, as you can see there, no? And also to change the stairs. 2010, Zahra-Zoujaj. I was still living in Lyon. Carlos, are you in Ceuta? Yes. Can I come here because I have a project, I don't know how to do that. And do you remember that drawing? That then became something like that. And then he got some volume, and then he started to do something like that. I think there was the idea, but also the fact that he met some craftsmen in a village in Strasbourg, I think. Les artisans. Eh?
C'est avec in France. In France, in the north.
So sometimes it is important, and it talks about how the mind that Younes led him to realize ideas when he knows the right person. No? And he always talked me about Saint Sophia, around a space with light. So I told him Tangier was also about that, but that trip was later. So sometimes you have like a puzzle, you start to combine things. So he arrived to Ceuta with this drawing. What do you think, Carlos? I told him, I'm not sure. It is not yours. I think after Hojra, I thought it was needed to be more simple. It was too complicated in volume and overall. I told him, when are you going to build this? The opening is in 1.5 months. Okay. So I told him, you need to show me everything you have been thinking on that project. So in order to let you work. And this model they have, it was the upper part of the installation. I told him, no. We are going to simplify, we are going to take this part, we are going to work on that. The volume is going to depend on the space. I need the plans of the place you are going to have this exhibition. He had to talk to the people from New York, the architect to New York, to send me the plan, in order to know how high could be that installation. But also I had to draw on 3D all the flowers, because at the beginning he wanted to do maybe something like in San Sofia, but it's going to take a lot of space, so I proposed him to work here, to do that smaller, because we have to think, and that was also interest, and it was his purpose to propose something visual as a volume, and in order that people could never imagine what they were going to find inside. No? Then it is a question of how the hell we were going to build that in Doha. And how we were going to install that, because it was the first time, and I had to figure out how to hang 77 flowers that made on glass that you cannot touch. It wasn't easy. All the plans, technical questions, and then the last sketch based on all the things we developed together, and it was very, very, very funny. Then in Doha, how to install that, it was very, very interesting, at least for me, you know. And then, once we came back, he sent me these images. Carlo, look at that. Yeah, Zahra-Zoujaj. Look carefully, please. Yeah, Zahra-Zoujaj. No, look, the guy who is coming inside. Oh my God, it's the same guy. So he was outside, I was inside. And we took the same shot at the same time. And he told me, Carlo, that's, I think, a way to show our complicity. Yeah. And what happened when you don't care about the scale? That was l'Institut du Monde Arabe, Paris, 2014. They didn't care about that. Zahra-Zoujaj was touching the ceiling. So, Nakhla, 2011. Younes was proposed to participate in an artist application for a sculpture park in Marrakech, in a new golf. And Younes told me, Carlos, you have to come to Marrakech because I have maybe a project in a golf. Wait, a golf? Marrakech? Are we going to take a part of that? So that was at the very first. Then we thought it's the first time maybe that a Moroccan company wants to do something like that. So, and then I started to think about the water in Marrakech, but then I was aware of the snow in the mountains. Later on, I also knew that Marrakech is going to have always water thanks to the snow. No? But well, finally, we came. We visit the place because we needed to find a place to this installation that he already thought about that in a project in 2003, but it was just 1.5 meters each of these elements. So when we started to work, also he had this iconography of architecture, not just in Tetuan, in Tanger, in Ceuta, in Escura. So there are elements that are repeated, but then also it is not just a question of copying those elements, but there is also the nature that appears. That's near Marrakech, a geological formation that he loved. I do. And we started to think how we could build that. Overall, knowing that we were talking about 7 meters high. And when I started to do that, it was supposed to be in concrete, in massive concrete. I told myself, it's going to be too heavy for there. It's going to be very expensive. What if we do a hollow, so we empty it, in order to do it lighter? And I made some proposition from an architectural point of view, a constructed way, how we could do that lighter. No? And then he started to work, and we decided that could be interesting to do something like that. It was also interesting how to pass from a sculpture to another thing that is closer than architecture. For me, once you build a space, you can come in, it's architecture. You know? Then there was Mustafa Krim that made the model on concrete. It was 70 centimeters, you know. So he didn't build this work, but we had a remember of this interesting. ENAT IMBA. ENAT is the National School of Architecture of Tetuan. At that period, there were only 5 schools of architecture. I started to teach there, and I proposed Younes to come. And it was also a question of the experiences we had together working in public spaces or on larger scale, how to share that experience with students. So I proposed him to come to the architecture school and also to develop a workshop called Madina Lab with my architecture student and his art students. And we decided to to make some teams in order to propose a path around the Medina or inside the Medina with art installation that finally we couldn't do because the king arrived. We had no permission to install the works, except two girls. That when I called them, Nakhla, we are going to put that in the museum. No. I work on the Medina. It's going to be hung in the Medina. In fact, I did that yesterday night with the help of the people working and living there. No. And then 3 years ago, it was me that came to the art school, to the invite, again in order to work in the same purpose, the public space. We asked the students to build something of at least 10 meters high, that it was going to be forever there. So they had to think about the public space, about the material, about the stability, about the tradition, about contemporaneity, and it wasn't easy at all. But I think it's interesting to mention the aspect of education, at least what we did together, sharing our experiences. No? That was after a workshop I did in Tirmat with the students with the help of Younes. And to finish, I would say, if I had to talk about Younes, frankly, I don't care about architecture. I don't care about contemporary art. For me, it's overall about friendship. And it's also, I was looking for a picture of the two of us alone. We hadn't. We took that picture some months later on a trip to Moulay Boucht Al Hamar, which is close to Tétouan, but it takes 6 hours by taxi or by van. And Younes told me, we were talking, it's great, it's uncomfortable, but that has been a while we didn't travel together. And I told him, look, 20 years later, here we are in a collective taxi, but we are so happy. Not just because of us, but because also of the adventure of that trip, because the curiosity of the new region, because we were going to meet another friend of us, Abdeljalil Saouli, and we were starting to prepare an event called Zahra, also with Gilles Aubry. So, and that finally we had some time for us, because once you start to develop your career, everyone has his agenda. It was complicated, but Younes, to talk about the Younes, or if you want to analyze Younes, you have also to analyze, I think, the trips you do all over the world and the people you meet. Every time, Carlos, you have to meet this guy. And sometimes you have to meet this Polish musician or this Spanish musician that then you are going to see in another. So it's also a question of sharing knowledge and also sharing friends. Shukran, ya Sadek.